Okay, welcome to episode 149 of the Never Iron Anything Comics 3 podcast. This week we are tackling a piece of manga. The show's designed to take a look under the typewriter and underneath the drawing board of different comics and different creators and pick them apart. This week I'm joined by my long-term comics buddy and collaborator, Mr. Tom Curry. How you doing, babe?
Hello. Hey, how's it going, man? Lovely to speak to you.
And you, mate, your first solo adventure with me.
Yes, I know. There's no more training wheels anymore. This is, I've got my Tony the Tiger bronze swimming certificate. I'm ready for the big water.
Yeah, the Don put your training wheel on, didn't he?
He did.
Yeah,
he helped. He made me feel comfortable. We had like a whole Rocky Mick training montage where it's all going upstairs, reading Battle and Eagle to be ready for it. But no, I'm ready for this one. Good to go.
I think he's just come back from Lawless, isn't he? From what I hear from Eamon, they had a good time.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was Eamon's this weekend, wasn't it?
I'm pleased Lawless went well. I'm pleased that the Lawless 2024 recommendations will start soon.
It's good point. Yeah,
the leader.
Just calling down and it's been a busy weekend because it was MCM as well this weekend.
Yeah,
just passed. As we talk, it's sort of late on the final day of the long weekend, the Monday bank holiday. But what a weekend!
It's been lovely. It's been really nice, actually. It's been good to sort of like spend some time going through this this great book and also some extended work around it as well. And just but it's been nice. Thank you, global warming. It's been good.
I've got a tower of books. I just showed you, didn't I?
Sitting
next to me.
And to be honest, seeing you take on this genre as a whole, this whole form of comics as a whole, it's been lovely to see, frankly.
It's been about a year and a half of me being a regular reader of manga, and we're going to get onto your reading habits around manga in a minute because you're better read than me around it. But I've very much enjoyed reading the older stuff. I think,
and I think that's a perfectly valid way to do it. Frankly. I think the seeing whatever the entry drug is and whatever keeps you there, frankly, there's something for. I think it's easy to dismiss it.
Yeah, and I think that's what I'd previously done. I think I'd dismissed it as sort of flighty, extreme emotion kind of thing. But there's a lot of depth to a lot of these books, especially. Now you look at this for a segue.
That's great.
Vince would be proud of me, especially the one we're about to talk about.
Yes.
Now. We had a little journey of this one, didn't we? So you you recommended a book to me, which was called Apollo's Song.
Yes, yes.
And I fucking loved it. And we intended to do a book by this creator, but on a shopping trip to Gosh, you found this one we're going to talk about.
Yes.
Didn't you? Yeah.
And the reason I got Apollo's Song was because you'd recommended this book.
Right.
And
of course, yeah.
And it was around about Christmas. It was about Christmas time, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go to a local comic book shop and see what they had, and they only had Apollo Song in place.
Yeah,
that's when I picked up Apollo Song, and I feel like Apollo Song is almost a companion piece to reading the one we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, and from the same period. We're getting ahead of ourselves. Did you want to just announce to the listener what we're going to be talking about, Geezer?
So great. Yeah. So today we are talking about the Book of Human Insects by Osamu Tezuka.
A book that is titled the Book of Human Insects, but also contains a book called the Book of Human Insects.
Yes.
From 1970 to 1971, this book. It's an old book, but I don't know if you agree with this. I found it surprisingly modern in certain areas.
Do you know what? In my notes, I was going to bring up the 1970 aspect of it.
Yeah.
Quite a few times actually. And I think there's something to keep in mind as we talk about this. This is over 50 years old.
Wow. It's incredible.
When you think about it, right? And you think about other things that came out in 1970. Led Zeppelin 3 came out in 1970.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
I mean, like Let It Be by the Beatles, Band of Gypsies by Jimi Hendrix.
Right. It was a time of change, man, wasn't it? From
it was,
67 through to sort of 73, before the world lost its nut to disco. It was a time of experimentation.
I'm changing topics a little bit here, but Ringworld, which by I think the name of the author, unfortunately,
Larry
Niven.
Yeah,
came out on the same year.
That's a great book, man, as well. I love it.
It's a great book.
It's one of my go-to. I don't really read science fiction. What should I read? That's one of my go-tos. That one. I've got to be honest with you. Yeah.
So it's an old book, and as we talk about it, it just seems to keep in mind that it's 50 years old and it was written in a completely different time.
Yeah, there's a lot of surprising aspects to this book for me. But let's start. I'll give a quick. So it's a book about the life and career of a young ingenue who steals the lives and skills of others, and has some strange and dark secrets. And out of that comes a web of deceit, a web of intrigue, and a web of romance in a way that runs for 364 pages. It's actually one of his shorter books, let's face it. It originally was published, described as post-teen, which I found an interesting term. Post-teen, so only suitable for 20 years and up, which I find originally published in Ningen Konjuki, which is play comic between 1970 and 1971. It was published in a Western format by Kodansha in 2012, which is a while ago, which may explain why you had trouble finding it. Kodansha are a massive Japanese publisher who have, interestingly enough, I was speaking to a buddy of mine who works at MCM, and he was saying, because we've just had MCM, he was saying that they are now doing MCMs, Kodansha, which is interesting.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So here's a question for you, and I don't know how deep you want to go into the story on this.
Yeah.
What, in the story, how long do you think we were with these characters for?
How much time passes within the comic?
Yeah,
it's a tough one, isn't it?
Because I don't think it's more than like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I was going to say a year, but I can see that. I can see why you're saying that. Yeah,
like it's a short period of time, and it's just something I keep in mind when I was reading it in terms of like it's a snapshot to this person's life.
Yeah, it is.
And you don't get much beforehand. You don't get much afterwards. Does that make sense? Like you don't get you're sort of chucked in very quickly of like, here's the situation, and it grows from there. Yeah.
Now we're going to go a little bit deeper into the story, but first off, I've got this sort of usual being new on the pod in a way. I want to just talk through some of your origin stories with manga. So you read a lot more manga than me, man. You were always recommending manga to me. What was your sort of entry drug into that area of comics?
For me, it started as a kid of a certain age. Pokemon was very big when Pokemon was very big when I was in the prime sort of 10, 11, 12 age.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the age where maybe you're like for other people, they're sort of starting to read like the Beano and the Dandy and stuff. And this is where, like, desperate for anything else about Pokemon, I found the Pokemon manga.
Okay, and that was quite a popular cartoon at the time, wasn't there? I think
it was a massive cartoon, and like reading, and I didn't appreciate at the time that was a different form of comics.
Yeah.
So then I would, be reading. I'm desperate for anything Pokemon related, Pokemon manga, and then led on to other stories as well. And I never went down the full sort of like Dragon Ball Z. I mean, I'd say
One
like
Piece
Sonic,
kind of stuff. Yeah.
No. But then when I got with my current partner, Em, she sort of got me back into it almost to an extent, and we started watching more anime. But then obviously there's a manga linked to that. So I remember, so it was about sort of 10, 12 years ago, I went through and read Death Note.
Okay, yeah.
Which is because we'd watched it, and I was like, oh, there's obviously more here than what they've shown on the screen, so let's read it instead. Okay. And then moved on to other things from there. And then that really sort of stepped up from there personally with the Shonen Jump app.
Yeah, which I got because you recommended it to me. Yeah.
It's a very particular type of storytelling, and there are degrees within that, and I can see how it could be some people's cup of tea and other people's not other people's. But for the cost of the thing, right? You'll find something in there you enjoy, and for me, that really kicks off for me. That really kicks off for me.
Yeah, $2.99 a month, man. I don't know why, but everyone hasn't got it. It's like cheaper than a coffee these days. You got to
exactly.
Do it. Yeah,
and So I think, and then that kind of kicks me on a certain cycle of reading, and then also, and you play part in this, like I'd say over a year and a bit ago, when you started exploring different sorts of manga.
Yeah,
because it's very easy with your reading to get into a rut.
Yeah,
where you have your 6 or 7 books, they come out on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, and you read through those and you enjoy the story, and then maybe you get a feeling for a kaiju comic or something, and you find something that fits that for a time, and you read kaiju number 9. But then it was your exploration of like deeper stuff. God, what was the name of the book you recommended?
Was it Shigeru Mizuki's? And
Yes.
Yeah, that's the one that clicked for me, man. That's the one where I suddenly went, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Which is, in many ways, I think is kind of like manga's mouse in a way.
Mm-hmm.
It really shows the horrific from a different angle and everything, of course. But yeah, it really shows that, and is masterfully done by a guy. Shigeru Mizuki is a guy akin to Tezuka in that he can do a range of styles and a range of subject matter, I think.
Agreed. Yeah.
He's
And I
not
think
pigeonholed, neither a pigeonholed, which
no,
I love. I think that's great.
it's
What about Tezuka, man? Where did you first
so
discover his work?
Tezuka's an interesting one because I was aware of Tezuka for a while, but naively only thought about it from an Astro Boy point of view.
Yeah,
So, like I was too old and too cool to read Astro Boy. So I
right.
didn't look any further than that. So in the same way that I just ignored him as an artist till embarrassingly, relatively recently, frankly, and then discovered other bits of his work again through a combination of himself and also just like trying to broaden my reading horizons a bit and discovering there's a whole wealth of stuff that he's produced. So
Yeah,
this Apollo Song, Buddha. I
yeah.
started reading Phoenix recently, which is a
Okay.
brilliant,
Yeah,
brilliant series.
Blackjack's another great one. The
Blackjack's another good one. Gone.
let's just dive a little bit into his history. We're not going to go super into Tezuka
Mm-hmm.
because, as it will be revealed in a second, we ain't got a month to talk. But the
No.
Osamu Tezuka, born the 3rd of November 1928, died the 9th of February 89 at only 60. Born in Osaka province. The museum for him is in Tarazuka. He died of stomach cancer, unfortunately. You can go to tezukaosamu.net/en, which is a great site for stuff of his. Now, this depends on who. I've read a number of accounts of this. We've both been like actively reading about this guy, and it depends on what you read. So I've gone for a sort of median, but an estimate of what he did is he created and wrote more than 700 manga series, and drew and wrote 170,000 pages of comics.
It's wild.
Fuck me. Yeah.
It's absolutely wild, isn't it, when you think about it?
And he penned over 200,000 pages of anime storyboards and scripts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Incredible.
It is amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. And I think there's obviously, I don't want to say a caveat, right? A lot of manga is produced in collaboration.
Yeah. Yeah.
In terms of like,
yeah.
with studios and that kind of jazz, but still to have the finger on the ball that much and to produce that much work.
Yeah. And an absolute ideas machine.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I think there's an interesting thing because I don't know if we want to go into this now, but his work covers a wide range of stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's not just horror.
No, and it's not just kid stuff, I think, which is
it's not just kid stuff. Yeah.
If you look a lot of the stuff, yeah.
I was thinking, go on, sorry.
I was going to say his influences growing up were Walt Disney and Max Fleischer cartoons, and you can tell that in a lot of his other work.
Yeah, 100%.
His mother he had a nice upbringing. His mother would take him to the local theatre, which ran performances that were the theatre was ran by women who would play all the roles. And he said that the costume designs heavily influenced his later comic characters. His parents were, he describes them as strict but supportive. And young Tezuka began drawing manga at elementary school. But after being very ill as a teenager, he pursued a career as a doctor. But whilst at medical, this is what a fucking genius he was. Whilst at medical school, he was also still drawing manga. Whilst there, he sold a 4-panel series called Diary of of Ma Chan, and that was made whilst he was studying to be a doctor, which he became a doctor. He passed his exams and everything. And then he sold, which was probably the big one, which was Shin Takara Jima, which is a reimagining of Treasure Island, and that is the one that sort of pushed him into being a mangaka. Due to post-war paper shortages at the time, they had a system, and I think we talked about this previously with Shigeru Mizuki, is that comics were made to go into a library almost, so there was only a couple made, and they were like lending libraries for kids who would go in because of the sort of post-war paper shortage. They would go in and get these comics and they would sort of lend them out. He's probably best known for Astro Boy. I'm going to say 100 million copies of Astro Boy has been sold.
It's wild. Absolutely wild. Yeah, I mean, what can you say, frankly, right? Like it's absolutely wild. And also the effect that character's had, right?
Yeah.
Like it's almost a universal character, and even if you've never read any Astro Boy, you know who Astro Boy is.
Yeah.
It's one of those where everyone could do a passing drawing of Astro Boy, and you can make it look like Astro Boy.
Yeah.
But then, not just to add on to that. Sorry, just to add on to that.
Mate,
if you go to his website, there's a nice character page where it's got like 50 of his top 50 characters.
Right.
And it's amazing. Like, again, these are all seminal works that like people adore and love and collect and will say that's their favorite work.
You got, Blackjack is, ran for 10 years, which is being reprinted at the moment. Kimber the Lion, which I've got to tell you, there's this conspiracy theory out there, isn't there? There's a lot of compared panels to the Lion King around Kimber the Lion.
Sure, yeah, I can understand that.
Princess Knight, like you said, Astro Boy. He's done a book on bloody Hitler. The Buddha books were the ones that won him the big Harvey and Eisner Awards. They were massive winners.
I've got to say that maybe a discussion for another time. You can see the Disney influence quite heavily in the Buddha books.
Yeah,
very heavily in the Buddha books.
Yeah, you can, and they're. I get what you're saying, around. They do studios, and his work isn't as well rendered as a lot of. Perhaps what modern comic readers are used to, even modern manga readers are used to. But the difference I always see with his comics, and I often explain this if I'm recommending the book to people who haven't read Tezuka before, is modern manga readers are used to maybe 1 or 2 panels on a page quite often. But his pages, even though they are smaller and in a manga format, contain as many panels as an American comic book page, albeit less rendered. It's quite an interesting, lengthier read,
That's a really, really, really good point. Actually, it's not a quick read, is it?
No,
it's not a quick read, and it's not you get used to a certain speed of read. If you read One Punch Man, you can get through One Punch Man quite happily in the evening.
Yeah.
Finish your tea, have a you've got a beer on the side. You can read through One Punch Man quite easily. This is a couple of nights. You need a bookmark for this one. Frankly.
Yeah, you do, man. Yeah, you most certainly do, don't you? Yeah, and I think all of his books are like that. And
you are right, though. You're definitely right about the whole that you get used to sort of like 2 or 3 panels, and then like having the way he does the pages and the space he gives the story to tell it. Yeah, it's really it's a good intermediary. Put it that way.
Yeah, this is no uncomplicated story either. This really goes to places. So I just to give a quick summary. I know we mentioned it, but so it's about a female. A young, I think she's 20. I think, is she 19 or 20 at the start?
Yes,
I think
she's late teens, early 20s.
Yeah, Toshika Tomura, and she is, as the book opens, is being honoured as Japan's new hot writer for her novel, The Book of Human Insects. But she seems to be brilliant and skilled beyond her years. And you later, and she's being pursued by a journalist at the start of it called Aokusa. He pursues her to discover the truth, and he quickly comes to a sticky end. But other people become involved in the investigation of Tamura. And you later realise that she has this sort of mimicking ability where she's almost like a succubus. She attaches herself to someone and takes everything from them without, shamelessly.
Yeah.
And the start, there's this suspicion that she's basically stolen the book from another woman who's killed herself and is found hanging. And that's in the first maybe 30 pages of the book, I'm guessing, something like that,
Yeah. I mean, this idea of she constantly has to change herself.
Yeah, nothing's original.
Nothing to it's always a copy of what she's. Yeah, it's a really interesting idea.
Yeah,
because that in itself is just a solid, and it's just where he takes that idea further and how he explores it and interactions around that. And
it's really interesting. So she gets close to the subject of her research, and this can be anything. At one point, it's design. At one point, it's novels. It can be anything. And she infiltrates every area of their life. Sometimes, often becoming their lover, and then takes the artistic life force from them in a way. And she's mostly without any kind of sort of moral centre.
None.
And is prepared to do anything to further her life and her career. With this strange psychosexual element to her secret backstory.
Yeah.
Which is a real. Well, I don't mind revealing it because it's revealed fairly early in the book, where she has a wax figure of her mother who she nakedly cavorts about with in a sort of hidden house in the town she grew up in.
See, those scenes were kind of some of my favourite scenes, not for the obvious reasons, but because just because this you see almost a more human side to this character.
Yeah.
Like there's a cracking in the facade.
Yeah,
At
it
that
gives
points.
Tezuka gives her a vulnerability at that point, almost like not
Yeah,
maybe like a chink in her armor that she can be
yeah, yeah,
attacked
yeah.
through.
And it's explored. It's really interesting.
Yeah,
There's so many different thoughts as I was going. I don't know. How did you feel when you were reading reading this in 2023?
a lot of things go through my mind as I read this, and that's I think is evident of how clever it is, and how well paced and everything, and how complicated and thriller-esque it is in a way.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things go through my mind, and I actually think that Tezuka becomes slightly distracted at moments in the creation of it, because if you look at the genre dots we get in this, we get the thriller, we get gay and straight erotica in it.
Mm-hmm.
We get at one point we get a Yakuza thriller. You know, you get characters from the Yakuza who turn up. We get at one point, for probably about 20 pages, we get a strange Golgo 13 type moment with the sniper and the explosive toy car and stuff.
Yeah.
We get soap opera. We
Yes.
get a commentary on the politics of abortions, for example.
Sure.
We get a
Yes.
commentary on the politics and the situation in Japan of business.
Yes.
And we get throughout it, and this is where I really wondered, I don't know what you thought, man, is we get a commentary on women and maybe Tezuka's view of women. It's a strange one, isn't it? Are
Yeah,
they?
it's a real. Yeah.
Are they? Is this? Because Tezuka was happily married for many years, you know. And
Yeah.
but it is. Was there something he saw or he experienced or he watched where a woman was just so manipulative he decided to turn it into a story? Did he come across someone, a manager maybe, or could be anything?
So I that's a really interesting line of thoughts,
Yeah,
and I can't escape the fact I read Apollo Song first.
yeah, yeah,
Song of Apollo, sorry, Song for Apollo first,
yeah.
because that feels like the male counterpart.
Yes,
the yin
it
to the
does.
yang.
That's a good point, man.
It
Yeah,
feels like the male counterpart to this story.
yeah,
So my so I'm happy to be this be seen as naive but my thought on it was maybe it is a manipulative thing, but also it's just how Tezuka saw the only way women could improve in the workplace, like the whole glass ceiling thing. The
yeah.
glass. So in other words, having to replicate because that was the accepted thing. But it's a really interesting.
It's a strange one because we just in the West, I don't know how it worked in Japan, experienced the sexual revolution. I know perhaps it was different in Japan. People's mores and traditions in that country are going to be different from the ones that I experienced in London.
Of course.
But the pill had come in. There'd been a freedom. We'd had the time of an era of renowned promiscuity, and women were, I'm going to guess, post-war as well, more active in the workplace.
Of course. Yeah.
Is this how what someone might see as an infiltration of a man's world by women be seen?
That's a really interesting thought. A really interesting thought.
Because she's excuse my French, but she's a right bitch, man.
She is absolutely.
God, she's awful most of the time.
She's terrible.
Isn't she? Yeah.
And she does horrific things.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to keep going back to a book we're not talking about today, but in Song for Apollo, he does horrific things as well.
Yeah.
And I didn't come away from this thinking, yeah, that's a really interesting thought. I hadn't considered that side of it, but it's a really interesting one to consider, frankly.
Yeah, I found some commentary on Book of Insects, and there's a few things written on it in English language you can find, and there's suggestions that this reflects the world of Japan at the time and Japan's. This is me paraphrasing it, but Japan's rush into a corporate and economic world, contrasted against a global antagonism that it felt, and also you had Vietnam going on at the same time.
Of course, yeah.
And the fact that China had closed its borders, and Japan was a little bit out there on its own. And there's a quote from Tezuka that says, "I was thinking about the yin and yang of this absurd era and wanted to draw a single woman living a Machiavellian life." So Machiavelli is an inspiration, I'm guessing. You know, there's a mixture of Machiavellian and, to her, in her mind, I'm guessing utilitarian kind of
Yes, of course.
life aspect. You know, she doesn't allow the emotion to enter her life when she looks purely and, you know, pragmatically to further her own self.
Which is again sort of kind of why those moments where she is letting herself be vulnerable in the house with the waxwork of her mother.
Yeah.
There's such a nice change of pace compared to the rest of the story, frankly.
Yeah. That is interesting. It is a breather. It's a breather, that, isn't it?
It is absolutely, and it's also her not being quite so single-minded on it. But that's it's really interesting.
I think it's the, let's call him, you know, air quotes, the love interest, Ryotaro Mizune. He says there's not a single thing that's truly your own. You just mimic and steal from others and deftly make it yours. And she has these men who some of them she just outright uses. You know, there's the assassin, there's the bloke who beats people up for her. You've got, but Mizuno is a recurring character who she fucked over earlier in her life, and he comes back into it. So I wonder whether there's an element of Tezuka softening on her through this, and love. You know, there's an element of love will conquer all. It rears its head, doesn't it? It doesn't. It's not successful, but
yeah. And then I mean, there's. I don't know how deep you want to go into the story on it, but there is that element of I don't want to say the twin, but the person, the almost the other side of her as well, that's represented by the other woman presence.
Yeah. And she is mirrored by a number of men throughout it.
She is, yeah.
So you get the mirroring of the man who forces her. He's the steel magnet guy, isn't he?
Yes.
Kiriru Kameishi. And he basically just fucking forces her into wifehood, you know, and then and insists he gets her pregnant and then follows her around. You know, this is when we get the commentary on abortion at the time. But he's almost like she's come up against someone who plays her game not better, but much more brutally.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he does have that kind of. He absolutely dominates. I don't want to say dominates the story, but he definitely dominates the situation. Every panel he's in, he's the bigger figure, which is unusual because obviously leading up to that point, she's always been the most dangerous person in the room.
Yeah, that's true, man.
When he comes along, he just changes the dynamic. And I think you'll point out the wandering genre thing is you are right. It really does as I'm now sort of like thinking about it, kind of the value of these kind of conversations, right? Because you don't when you're reading it yourself and you sort of think about it, you think, and then having someone else bounce these ideas off of.
I think the thing is with this book, so many ideas come into my head that if I didn't fucking write them down, I'd never remember them. You know?
Yeah. No, absolutely. But you're right. The Steel Magnet is an interesting addition to the book as a whole.
Because it's really physically, he's not a match for her. He's a sort of older man wearing glasses.
Yes.
You know, he looks like just, you know, a corporate businessman. You know, but they use him so much through this. That's the bit that seems the most combative to me area of this book, which is weird when you think that she gets chased and shot at and all sorts of things going on at various parts of it. But that's the bit you think, oh, this is awful. And you begin and Tezuka turns the tables. You begin to feel for her, I think.
You do. You really do. Yeah. And I think there's an element of control. Everything leading up to that point, she's been in control of the situation.
Yeah.
Be that the people she picks to mimic, how she does it, be sexually or through more of a transactional method or through just mimicking. But when he's introduced, she loses that control. She loses that agency, which obviously changes the tone of the book considerably compared to what we had been previously, frankly.
And then if you look at it, the only way she succeeds a way out of it in order to get the abortion is by seducing a woman. Which I'm guessing at the time in Japan was quite something for the man who did Astro Boy and Kimber the Lion. You know,
I can tell you for free, it's not. It's still something now, frankly.
Right. Okay.
It is. It's still. It's a lot more open, but it's nowhere near the situation like
here. Okay. Now this brings us to one of the big points, and something I mentioned in our notes is domestic violence. It occurs 3 or 4 times throughout the book. She is beaten, and it's a strange one because it's done. It's different times. It's different part of the world. But to me, it almost seems like it's done for reasons other than to show her as the victim. There's almost at moments a triumphant, you almost are meant to think, well, the man's giving her a slap.
Yes.
It's almost that old school, awful kind of domestic violence thing,
Absolutely. Here's a question. Did you ever feel that the domestic violence shown in the book was there for shock purposes? Or was it there to further the story?
Yeah, I felt shock when I read it, I think.
You felt shocked when you read it?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think so. But I can see that Tezuka maybe sees it as part of a relationship.
Yeah. Absolutely. Maybe I didn't. Yeah.
We're meant to think she deserves it, I think, her points.
Yeah, it's that. Yeah, now it's a tricky one. It's a very tricky one because obviously it all depends on upbringing and experiences and stuff. And yeah, it definitely shocked me when it happened.
Yeah,
really, from like a sensibilities point of view.
I think when the young love interest does it, I got less of a sense of the brutality of it.
Sure,
he does it purely. Yeah. Not that I'm advocating in any way. If you hit a woman, you should go to prison. But when Mizuno does it, it's born of frustration that his life's ruined and she's been so duplicitous. Right. But when the Nippon Steel guy does it, you think that's fucking just full on bullying,
But of course, our feeling about the character has changed by the time the Steel guy does it. Right? We've already we're back on her. We're on her side because it's just a horrible situation she's in generally.
Yeah,
and he flips our feelings on this character several times in the book, back and forth, or at least he flipped my feelings on it several times back and forth, and just how it's an interesting. They're definitely punctuation points in the book where you go like, oh, okay, this is it's a lot.
It's obviously showing the cruelty that happens between closed doors between men and women as well, and not just through violence, but that's a big show and tell, I think, as well. We never know what goes on behind someone's closed door, do we?
No, of course not.
There's always someone you've known at work or something, and you think, oh, she's all right, but you can never tell. Yeah. Okay, well, let's go through some of the moments.
Sure, absolutely.
I've mentioned a couple. So for those who the domestic violence, there's a number of pages, and I think we've discussed that. I do genuinely feel like Tezuka occasionally needs to cheer himself up whilst drawing this, and
sure.
And one of them is page 53, which is a discussion between a man and a woman. And Tezuka inserts a fox hunting. Was it a fox hunting something? Isn't it? Is it?
It's almost. It reminds me a bit of like Wile E. Coyote.
Yes, which harks back to the old Fleischer cartoons in a way, I think. Yeah. And I think it's meant to be a cat, isn't it? A fox chasing a cat, and it's added at the bottom of a sexually frustrated. She's just sort of shown him her bum, subtly.
Yeah.
And he's sweating, and to perfectly not idealize, but show what's going on. He shows the fox hunting the cat, but we know it's the other way around.
Absolutely, yeah. No, and like that. I'm pleased you picked this image actually, because it is. It's just it says so much with everyone thinks they're winning in that situation. Everyone thinks they're in charge in that situation.
Yeah.
Like everyone believes they're the person who holds the power, and it's nowhere near as black and white as it seems. Yeah, it seems to anyone, frankly.
Yeah. One of the other things I like that Tezuka does is rain. I'm a big lover of rain in comics, and not page 93, page 95, and page 184 in this book have got some beautiful pieces of rain. Very simply done,
You're right. You're absolutely right. Actually, the 95 one particularly is lovely. Frankly, the lights through from the house. Absolutely beautiful. Frankly, really
it's so lovely, isn't it? I love it when he does that. So for people who haven't maybe got it in front of them, what manga does a lot is we get a mangaized, caricaturized discussion between characters and robots and all that sort of thing. But what they do as well, and this is common in modern manga as well, Kaiju number 8 does it as well, is they throw in very realistic backgrounds. And on page 95 of this, we go from a conversation between a gangster and the main character, but to give you a sense of place and majesty of where, this geezer lives in this massive sort of house, which it looks like a shogun lives there almost, from a distance, isn't it? They pour light and rain onto the page and they give it a much more realistic feel, and I absolutely love that. I mean, that would be one of the pages of this book I would love to own.
If you go to 109, you get there's not rain this time, but there's similar sort of like beautiful outside scene as well.
Yes, yeah.
Like it's 2/3 of the page. It's lovingly rendered.
Yeah.
Because on that same page, you see her in the nudes, and it's an incredibly simple.
Yeah, it's just a flowing line. Her nudity.
There's
nothing super detailed, is there? In any event, the nudity.
I don't want to say like Darwin Cook, but it reminds me of that kind of like simplicity of
cartooning. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, cartooning, fantastic.
124 is like that as well with the buildings. This is clearly an actual place.
Yes.
And so he throws in, and the one that really knocked my socks off. Funny that you should mention this because I've got this on my list. Is 219, which has a sort of psycho element, like a geography thing going on with her walking between these buildings that are so overbearing and disappear into the fog above them. So I love, and he does a lot of that vertical panel work in this. And a lot of the vertical panel work is to show loneliness. There's another page which I picked out, is page 43, which does this in a very simple, beautiful way. And is just so it's 5 vertical panels on a page. The first 2 are fully rendered, and then slowly the figure who's basically been told to F off by this sort of tough guy, it slowly moves him up the page in what becomes a thinner single black line of an image, and it just shows that isolation of that character. Beautiful, just incredible.
If you ignore, and you shouldn't, obviously, the writing and the artwork, but just look at like panel layout and pacing and use of word balloons. And obviously, word balloons for the English translation is always a bit odd, because they're a bit too oversized.
Yes,
but it's it's just a master of like, you're never uncertain where to go.
Yeah,
you always know, your eye always knows where to go, and it's just beautiful. It's just absolutely beautiful, and you're absolutely like. 43 particularly is a lovely example of just
less is more.
Less is more, really simplistic. And even look at 42 on the previous page. That bottom left panel, 2/3 is black, but it's just a beautiful, exactly, it's a great view, exactly where you're coming from. It's just
he played on the page so much. He needs more credit of being just original on the page with stuff like this, which goes to my next one, which was goes back to the abuse thing. Now, if you go to page 110, I think we're led to believe that's a rape. So it's just near to the bit where you've had with by the river. So they're by the river, they're naked by the rapids. She wakes up naked, and there's this sort of lanky gangster character. There's, apart from nudity, there's no violence shown. There's a tiny pull of an arm, but there's an evident threat. But the rape is shown by her face in a really strange upward-looking silhouette on a black panel.
It's an interesting one because it's left a little bit. It's less ambiguous.
Yeah,
it's really left ambiguous. Whereas like a lesser artist would have felt the need to really make it clear.
Yeah,
it's left quite ambiguous, frankly, and especially as you carry on through the story, it's definitely not clear. It becomes even less clear, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Or if this is just another thing that she's going to have to do to survive.
Yeah, it's a weird one, that. And so she's raped by the river, by this man who's much stronger than her. But if you follow it through a few pages later, she sleeps with him of her own volition.
Yeah, it's
a power struggle. He has this brutality and this strength, but she, by the time we get a few pages in, she's got him.
Yes.
And I don't think you see that sort of thing in comics anymore. People are afraid to show it. They need to show that he has his balls cut off, or he dies or something. But no, what Tezuka does is he applies the character of the female in this story, and she uses him in the end. She controls him in a few pages' time through that. It's very, very strong. I
think the shift of power is a major theme of this book, frankly.
Yeah, isn't it?
It's not just her taking abilities or skills, but actually her shifting power from them to herself.
Yeah,
is a real theme throughout this whole book, frankly. It just comes up time and time again.
Yeah, it really is, man. It's and we go back to what was Tezuka thinking. Was he really thinking?
Yeah.
What are women doing? Are they manipulating us as men? Yeah. It's a really interesting stuff. Now, this occurred during Tezuka's what is widely called as his dark period. So there was a period in the sort of very late 60s through to the early 70s where he produced a lot of stuff that was much more darker than we'd previously seen. And this includes Apollo's Song. It includes Barbara, which you can't get in English language. I accidentally bought in German because I fucking do that. I'm rubbish at things. But the Impulse bought it on eBay, and it turned out to be German. But that takes the psychosexual thing to the next level. And there is you can buy it on Blu-ray. There's a movie, a Japanese movie of it, and that is really strange. He has sex with a doll in a shop, and it's very strange. But he isn't that fond of the stuff that he saw. If you listen to him talk about it, he says he's not that fond of it. And there's also a Yoko as well from that period, and it's almost seen as Blackjack, which started in 73 and ran to 83, was his escape from that. Escape from the dark period.
Again, but this is the same guy who made Astro Boy.
Yeah.
Like it's the same mind who's made that, and it's just him exploring. It almost is like him exploring this side of his nature.
Yeah, as I understand it, there was financial issues, I think, with the studio he was working with.
Oh,
and
interesting.
I think I think there was a definite depression. But, a lot of people get depressed and, can't manage to make a comic. He made, about 8,000 pages of comics?
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Incredible, just
That's
amazing.
Just how I move through it, frankly. I move through it.
And I think he shakes it off because by the time we get to the early 80s, he had started experimenting again, but in animation. So there's a great... I think you can find it on YouTube. It's certainly on the YouTube channel that I mentioned at the end of the show, called Jumping. Have you seen this one? Which is just the view of someone jumping over things through a city.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
Beautiful. Really beautiful.
Interesting. He started like Buddha in 72.
Right, okay. So maybe that was the way out then, man.
Do you know what I mean? Like there's Buddha, Blackjack. I was just looking through so Buddha, Blackjack, and Phoenix was on going through it, but Buddha and Blackjack started in the 72, 73 respectively.
Yeah.
So he clearly was working, and there's no sense of this at all in Buddha.
Yeah.
Like from what I've read of Buddha, there is none of this at all.
Yeah, I've only read the first volume of Buddha. I think I made the mistake of taking that as my first book to read of his because I kind of didn't get it. I think you have to get him, I think, sometimes.
It's an interesting one. It's a really interesting one, frankly. I enjoy it, but I think I enjoy it knowing him.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even pretend to know him at the moment, frankly. Like from what I've read, as I'm learning more about it. For example, you mentioned you picked up the Adolf book.
Yeah.
And there's not many creators I'd be comfortable who I think would be comfortable reading a book about Adolf Hitler.
Yeah, it's a mixture of people, a number of people called Adolf, but it is partly, it's a big chunk of it. It's about the Second World War and stuff. Yeah.
So it's
I said to you I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say it, and I've been backwards and forwards on whether I should say it or not because I know people won't agree with me, but I do think there's a good case to be made that he is the best writer ever in comics.
I think that's a fine thing to say. I think that's a perfectly okay, the purely from a range of genres covered.
Yeah,
you can't disagree with the fact that he produces something for everyone.
Yeah,
and there's no you can't get around it.
Yeah, everyone can write a certain thing, but not everyone can write everything.
No,
And
if you were to if I was to be if you were to be critical,
yeah,
you sometimes don't hear his voice, and I know that's kind of an idea we have. We have every now. We pick it. You pick an artist or a writer you enjoy, and you say, okay, well, I know that's a Millar book because I can hear his voice in it.
Yeah, it's not always it's totally right, I think.
No, and like sometimes with Tezuka stuff, you don't hear that so much. But is that a bad thing? I don't know if that is a bad thing at all.
Yeah, there's this big theory, isn't it, that you should be writing the character and not you.
Yes,
and I think he does that. He's the prime example of a man who is for a chunk of what he's writing, free of ego in relation to what he's saying and what he's been done.
Take Juto Ito, for example.
Yeah.
I've yet to read a book by him, and I'm sure there is one out there that doesn't feel like they all feel like his books.
Yeah,
they're all horror. They've all got that sort of style to them. Even the cat book was his story.
I mean, Stan Lee's the same, man. They're all like that, aren't they? Grant Morrison, Alan
Kirby,
Moore, especially.
Oh, absolutely. But Tezuka, you can read this, and then you can read Astro Boy, and if you told me there are two separate authors, I'd be like, yeah, fine, makes sense.
Yep.
And same with Buddha, right? You'd read Buddha and be like, oh, this is a Disneyfied version of the Buddha story. Cool. Yeah. Okay.
And this was comic writers. If you apply, if you think about the stories we've heard from Uncle Pat in relation to British comics, they were writing girls' comics. They were writing core, comedy books.
Yeah.
And they were at the same time they're writing Nemesis the Warlock. Him and John Wagner in their shed were writing all these different things, and they were applying themselves to what the reader wanted and what the story needed. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, not always. But
he's definitely worth putting on your shelf if you haven't read it.
Yeah, there's
definitely
go on. Sorry, mate, you go on.
No, I was going to say there's something out there. I think I honestly believe you could find something out there for everyone.
Yeah, I think you can. I think you're right, man. And I think that's why I gravitate towards this Gekiga dark period stuff of his. I've got I say I've got Astro, I've got fucking French because I'm a knob. But I would give it a go for the pure reason that I just feel in me that it's part of history and everything, and I should experience it because it may give me a greater insight into it. But this stuff is what I really, really enjoy. And there's plenty of it. There's loads of it.
Absolutely.
There's some I bought. I'm trying to think of the name of the book now. It's I think I've got it here. Bear with me just a second. What's it called? I haven't got it here. No, sorry. There's a book I bought. I think it's called Up in the Air or something like that, which was a book of short stories that was cellophane wrapped in gouache. And I thought, Tezuka, maybe it's a bit saucy. Tezuka. Sure. No, it was because of the racial stereotypes used within it. And there's a couple of essays you can find. Academic essays on his use of racial stereotypes, especially. Black people in the comics, and they're akin to Hergé's stuff, right? And it does take a bit of a deep inhalation of breath to try and get through. But then again, that was going on a lot. It was going on at Disney.
Yeah, of course, it was. Absolutely. Sound of the South, and again, you've got to keep in mind when this was written.
Yeah.
When these things, this book's 50 years old.
Yeah, exactly. And this, this was a mid-period book for him.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's an interesting writer called Frederick L. Schott who he's written a lot of books on manga. He did write Manga, which is the book we quoted when we did our manga month last year. And there's a great kayfabe, I think from a couple of years ago, where they interview him, and he's a very sort of gently spoken, interesting guy. But he was one of the people who first approached Tezuka about translating Phoenix, and I don't think they were successful in that. But he's managed to spend a lot of time hanging out with Tezuka. And he tells us a great story where him and Tezuka were waiting to... I think they'd been to San Diego. Tezuka went to San Diego, I think, 2 or 3 times. And they were waiting to fly back to Japan. And Tezuka, he said he found everyone and everything interesting, which I really admire in someone, and I find interesting with him. Yeah. And he said he was asking Mr. Schott all these questions, and they missed their plane. He said, but that was just what he was like. He just was so engrossed in what was going on. And he had that like laser vision, that concentration, I think, which was great. And he, even though he was, There's this famous video going around, isn't it? You can find it in Helen McCarthy's book, The Art of Osamu Tezuka, God of Manga. There's a DVD in it as well, and it's the documentary. You can find it on YouTube as well, of them visiting, a film crew visited his studio. And he famously had this like flat. It looks like he's in like a block of flats in Tokyo.
Yeah.
And they go and film in there, and he didn't let anyone come in. I think his wife could come and drop sandwiches off, and his editor was allowed in the hallway and stuff like that, you know. And this was just a flat where he would go and work.
Sure.
And they film him like sleeping at his table and stressing over stuff and playing jazz music and stuff like that. And that was his life back then.
Yeah.
You know, he would have to. There's that famous. I think kayfabe used to get every so often. I've got 20 more pages to do by tomorrow morning. I better crack on.
It's wild. I mean, like, the thing is, that's still the work ethic that's around now, Frank. It's wild, you know.
Yeah,
it is that. There's a reason they pump out so much stuff.
Yeah.
It's
you got to admire it, ain't you?
You really do, and it's lovely talking about it.
Yeah, it really is, man. Yeah, it really is.
It really is beautiful.
Okay, now we've been going 50 minutes already. Look at that.
Oof.
What's happened?
God.
Is there any sort of other manga that you've really enjoyed, man, that you wanted to recommend while we're here?
Do you know, as like an easy recommendation for people who maybe want to make a jump into manga as a whole.
Yeah.
Attack on Titan.
Okay.
Is a nice, solid,
easily obtainable, I'm guessing. Yeah.
Easily attainable. There's always a humble bundle for it on somewhere or another.
Right.
If you want it digitally, but you can also find the books easy peasy as well. That's always one it's an easy recommend because it's basically a zombie story.
It's like a sci-fi zombie story, is it, sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, so the zombies are giants.
Right.
Word. But then it moves from there.
There's an anime of this, and is there a live-action movie as well or something? Am I right in thinking that?
If there is, I haven't seen it.
Maybe I'm wrong. I've probably got that wrong, man. Yeah.
There probably is one in the works.
Yeah.
There is definitely anime. I would say the manga's really good, and it does the classic zombies do, which is essentially, you know, you work out how to deal with zombies, and then you work out the people problems.
Yeah.
And it's a nice, easy one for people to like get into and read. In terms of, I think that's the one I sort of like as an easy recommend for people who haven't read any manga before. In terms of like things I really enjoy, I think Chainsaw Man is really exciting moment, and also My Hero Academia is also really exciting.
Okay.
And and I've recommended it multiple times, and I probably will still keep recommending it because it gives me that feeling that I think you've described, where like early X-Men.
Yeah.
The Grant Morrison run of X-Men, where you have that mix of like world-ending events and also school stuff.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You want that mix of. I want the duality of like, oh no, this is a big problem we have to solve, but also there's a summer dance coming up.
Kind of vibe.
Yeah. There's a summer dance coming up, and we need to work out who's going to arrange it and who I can ask to it. And I want both sides of it, and My Hero does that so well. And it's wrapping up, and it's getting to, it's doing that thing. It's wrapping up, and it's all become bigger and more bombastic.
Yeah.
But the journey it's taken me to get there is lovely.
Yeah.
So I will forgive it that as a. But I also want to do more. I want to do more of the reading that you're currently doing at the moment.
You want to? What, sorry, mate, I missed that.
I want to do more of the reading that you're currently doing at the moment.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is like looking away from the shonen, which is easy for me to read, but more into the slightly trickier, more like what is the term for it? I think it's seinen.
Seinen. Yeah. There's
seinen,
and there's a lot of underground stuff as well. I was showing you, was it Pushman and stuff we were chatting about? And there's some dark shit going on, man. You know,
and that's
living in that like post-war period. You know, the GIs are still there, and there's some dark stuff going on, but some really clever stuff going on.
I think it was Guns that said it. He was like, when Dan was saying he wanted to find the My Friend Dharma for manga.
Yeah, good point.
And I don't think I found it yet, but that's kind of he's got it in one. That kind of like maybe that's a bit of historical. Again, the post-war stuff was quite good for that in terms of story. But that's
a conversation for another day is something that I was discussing on Friday night, is the fact that US and UK comics have now been overtaken by manga. You know, there's no competition left anymore. You know, they're outselling us, thousands to one.
Sure, yeah.
We now need to be riding the coattails of manga to return. Do you know what I mean? We need to learn from them.
Yeah, I think the again, I think it's Dan who said it. Like, if they provide what the customer wants,
yeah,
the customer will buy it. And but it. God, I always feel conflicted about that statement, because I think you're right, but also it's how do you respond to it?
yeah, yeah.
And the response isn't for Marvel to do a manga month. And sorry, not manga. Sorry, to like a manga series, right?
Yeah, I know.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not for Marvel to produce manga Spider-Man for 6 issues. It's to learn it's to take the other lessons from it, which is how are they making it? What stories are they telling?
What's the distribution model?
What's the distribution model? Okay, so you can always find number one, and it's a very clear arc of like 1 to 55. You know what I mean? That's the thing.
They can't help themselves, though, can they, Marvel?
No,
you think, nice jumping on series. Oh, fuck me, we go crossover by issue 3. Yeah,
that's the thing to learn from it, not the art style.
Yeah,
the art style isn't the thing. It's part of it, but it's not the lessons to take from this. It's how they bring you into the story.
Yeah. And they're hooking everyone, man. They're hooking people. Yeah, they really are. Yeah, yeah.
But I still think Small Press does that exceptionally well as well, right?
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, hopefully.
Shame and Kane. You can find issue number 1. You can start there. It goes up to issue 7 or 9. No,
9 it is. I literally got 9 a couple of days ago. Yeah, yeah. From Mr. Brown. Yeah.
You can get number 1. You can get to number 9. That's exactly the attitude, right? It's an easy one to go for. Merrick the Elephant Man.
Yeah, it's another one. As long as you can get the early ones, yeah.
If you can get the early ones, Vanguard, right? Where to go for number 1. It's the first page of the website.
Yeah, that is true, man.
You can go there and you can read through it, and and there's no that's brilliant. That's exactly what I'm looking for, And that's what manga does well. It gives you that clear number 1. Grandma, mum and dad going into the shop, or granny going into the shop, can go to and find number 1 and pick it out and say, well, this is number 1. And if they want number 4, they can ask number 4, and that's the ease of it. Whereas trying to find number 1 of...
I mean, you and me walked into Forbidden Planet, didn't we, in London a few weeks ago? Imagine walking into the comics bit and going, right, where the fuck do I start?
Yeah, where do I start? My kids just watched Guardians of the Galaxy. They really like Guardians of the Galaxy now. Where do I
know. Start? It's mad, isn't it? And it mad.
What's the number 1? What book do I buy them?
Oh, well, that's volume 8. Maybe, God. Well, what about volume 1? Now, volume 1's different characters. It's like this. Oh, God. Yeah.
It's wild. And that's Miles Morales Spider-Man. Like, Into the Spider-Verse is coming out.
Yeah. It's going to be massive.
It's going to be big. People are going to love it. And then all they need to do is reprint the Ultimate, the Miles Morales Ultimates, and you'd be laughing.
Yeah.
But it's the search for number 1 that I think is the issue, unfortunately.
Yeah, when you've just got those spines looking at you from the next alcove at the Forbidden Planet, it's easy to find something in it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean...
And I hope they do start doing that thing where they keep stuff in print. I've been trying to find 20th Century Boys Volume 1 for ages. And I think they need to start considering that. These books are, I think part of it was the paper shortage, wasn't it? Which was what Demon Slayer caused.
Yes. Apologies for that little rant. Sorry, that was...
No, that's fine, man. No, that's fine.
I know where that came from, frankly. Yeah, that was all... Yeah.
Right, we're going to get to talking about your links and everything in a second, but I thought give the listeners... So these are some of the books that I referenced and some of the places I went to for it. As we said, The Art of Osamu Tezuka, God of Manga by Helen McCarthy. Go back to Manga Month at the ACP last year. We had Helen on. It's fucking brilliant. Love Helen. She's so good, man. She does a 10-minute or 15-minute video. This is your entry level to manga. You can find it on YouTube. Look that up. Manga by Frederick L. Schott, as well as the guy we were talking about earlier. The Osamu Tezuka, a manga by Toshiro Ben and Tezuka Productions, which is a big old manga of the life of Tezuka. The Astro Boy Essays by various writers, which is a book of essays about Astro Boy. Tezuka Osamu.net/en, take it to the English language. If you go to YouTube, you can look. Tezuka Production Official has many of the episodes of his anime. It's got Kimber and Astro Boy and all sorts of things on there, which is nice just to get a little taste. It gives you a little a time travel back to those days. And if you go to the YouTube channel Mangaka Art, it has the secret of Osamu Tezuka's creation, and there's some really good interviews and moments with the master there as well. That's just a number of the ones I found, but there's lots of stuff on there about him you can find. But do yourself a favour, if you kind of like the darker side of stuff, go and get the Book of Human Insects. We forgot to mention he had an obsession with insects as a kid, which may be the reason that this came out. It's a nice, of all of his books, this is probably one of the ones you can fit in your rucksack and take to work. I would say Hitler, and even Apollo's Son song, you might have to leave your packed lunch behind to get that in your bag. Recycling. But there's a few of them that are like that.
No, this one's lovely. It's great size. If you can find it, it's lovely. It's happy to have on the shelf.
And it cunningly looks like you're reading a novel from a distance.
It does.
For us, in the closet, comic readers on the train. But where can we find you, babes? Where can we find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at this chucklehead. I'm also hanging out in the ACP Slack as well. I'm a reader, not a shower, but I am there. And you know what? Just find me right about there doing my thing. It's all good. How about yourself? Where can we find you, Tony?
Thank you for asking. It's very kind of you.
That's okay.
Did you hear our rant on today's episode from the ACP?
Okay,
Oh, we reviewed your comic. Oh, thanks. I'll have a look for that. Right, brilliant. It's neveronanything.com. You can find all the episodes of this. You can go back and listen to all the 148 episodes. And there's also I'm doing like a weekly reading roundup, some thoughts on the small press and some little thoughts about stuff. Dirty Basement 1 and 2 is about 24 hours left on it. It's filth. Underground Comics, which we've done. So me and Falpin and Keith Cumber and Daryl Thorpe and a few other guys all got together to make this little anthology, which takes hopefully the best of the UK underground scene, which is a burgeoning scene at the moment, and put them into comics. It has Metamorphosis, Cockbiter, a political story about bananas, and more in there. So go and have a look at that.
Fantastic.
Mate, Triumph.
Great.
Really good episode. Thanks, mate. We got into the weeds of that one. Really good.
Yeah, I've been since you asked me to do this, it's been a pleasure reading these books. And also thinking about them a bit deeply and not just firing and forgetting. Really great.
Yeah,
really
great. Good stuff, man. Let's get our thinking caps on and think about something else. But for the moment, we shall say goodbye to the listeners. Thanks, man.
Goodbye to the listeners. Take care. See you all.